Welcome to a journey in soul discovery. I'm your host, Adrienne Nicastro, from Pathways to Inner Peace. We each have the power within us to transform our lives. Our desire to grow brings new opportunities, journeys of metamorphosis that arrive special delivery from the universe. Through your intentions, the world heard your call, leading you to this podcast and the adventures in soul discovery that you'll find here. Support, guidance, and practical tools for living and navigating our human world with more love, peace, and joy. This is what I endeavor to offer. I hope you find what you're looking for here. For more information, please visit me at www.pathways2innerpeace.com. Be blessed.
Hi there, and welcome to the podcast on the ego. This is a recording to help you navigate some aspects of personality that can be very challenging, especially in these chaotic times. It's a chapter from the Soul Discovery Journal Book, Volume 2, to help you get more tools to being mindful and centered. To begin our lesson about the ego, I'd like to start with a Native American proverb that goes like this. There is a great battle of two wolves inside us. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, lies, inferiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, compassion, and truth. The wolf that wins is the one we feed. This is very true about the ego. So let's talk about what is the ego. The word ego and concept echoes through our modern times. In the Western culture, the term frequently becomes inserted in everyday conversations to identify how we think of ourselves and others. References to this common meaning include egomaniac, egotistical, and egocentric labeling, which negatively characterize our human tendencies towards self-aggrandizement, inflating our personal worth well beyond others through conceit and arrogance. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, ego is the opinion that we have about ourselves. However, the term's Old Latin roots reach back to 1714 as a metaphysical identification of I, as in I, me, myself. In 1932, the father of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, introduced an altogether different view of ego as the part of the personality that experiences and reacts to the world, mediating between the pleasure-seeking, pain-avoidant demands of our id and the conscious, guilt-ridden social drives of the superego. It essentially operates as a regulator, a decision-maker between the rules of life and what we want. As such, we might welcome the interventions of Freud's ego, thinking it will guide us down a mediated road between rigid rule-following and total debauchery. These pages offer another approach to the ego, one that explores the concept from a spiritual context. In this framework, our ego is seen as an aspect of who we think or believe we are, the little self that includes the rule-bound, the gratification-motivated, critical, immature, hyper-responsible, emotional, and shrewd aspects all rolled into one. While the distinction between our commonplace understanding and the spiritual may seem relatively thin, the difference lies in what appears as a mere opinion or attitude versus who we think we are in totality. The very vision of the little self that attempts to separate us from our divinity. To understand this spiritually based ego, we must revisit a long ago time when monsters dominated our earth, easily taking advantage of our physical form's vulnerabilities. In this landscape, our bodies stood unmatched against animals sporting big teeth, long claws, and brute strength. Tall cliffs and deep swamp posed other threats. Because of these earth-based dangers, we created an ego for protection and survival to keep us from danger by sounding an alarm. Instead of living moment by moment in union with our divinity for guidance and navigation, we created the ego to steer for us. It issued warnings, making sure that predatory jaws didn't turn us into lunch. We plummeted to our physical death, or we avoided playing victim to any number of life-threatening scenarios. As a result, we invested so much energy into this personal security system that we forgot how to operate without it. Flash forward to now, and we can witness how the ego still treats every perceived danger as if some big toothy beast were snapping at our heels. Common stressors today like traffic jams, insults, weather, deadlines, and mistakes, to name a few, generate a survival response identical to prehistoric dangers. Our ego makes no differentiation between the threats of old and what we see as threats to our pride, confidence, image, and career success. Moment by moment, our ego may jump into defensive action, cloaked as judgment, criticism, blame, hostility, or jealousy. Any negative state of mind or emotion, in fact, holds ego's fear-based brand, acting to quote-unquote protect us from perceived dangers. At other times, when our ego appears to cease fire on others, the arrows and daggers intended to defend from outside forces can stealthily turn tail and attack us as self-criticism. Simply said, any type of judgment, criticism, or blaming of others or ourselves is the work of the ego, and it will use anything and everything from 30 seconds ago to 30 lifetimes ago, keenly reaching into our soul memory, to convince us that we are in dangerous territory, alone in this world, and especially lacking the help of Source. My dog Xana offers a good example of ego in action, more specifically her quirky behavior. Oh, how I wish you knew her. Early on, she proved to be a very sweet handful, escaping through our legs as we exited our home, barking at everything and nothing, getting trapped in tick-filled, brambly patches on our wooded walks, trying to sleep on my head in the middle of the night, and using carpets like grass if it was too cold or wet outside. If she led the way on our outings, Lord knows where we might go. The distracting tricks, scattered thinking, alarmist reactions to everything and nothing, and entanglement in the briar patch of our imagination, these are the tactics of our ego. Please don't misunderstand now. Our feelings, emotions, thoughts, and experiences are not to be denied. Rejecting our personal climate is a recipe for misery. All our experiences, in fact, provide rich lessons. How we feel or think merely calls us to pay attention in the here and now and to own our part in any interaction or reaction. Looking within to be aware, authentic, and personally responsible provides opportunities to identify the themes of our life via all interactions so we can shine through our true self instead. The following is a list of common ego reactions. And if you would like to do the exercises to help you get more familiar with dealing with your ego, you might want to write these down as we go along, or you could go back later and listen and write the list. So our ego is operating when we engage in the following: blaming others or ourselves, judging others or ourselves, excluding others or ourselves, believing in the superiority of a culture, race, gender, sexuality, religion, career, ethnicity, etc. Accusing others or ourselves, negative or positive labeling that criticizes or inflates, complaining or gossiping, demanding recognition, demanding attention, needing to assert our opinion, needing to make an impression, needing to be right, making others or ourselves wrong as a character flaw. The list goes on. Having aggressive or hostile reactions, being a martyr, having jealous reactions, whining or complaining about our life, staying in a victim role, feeling insecure, inadequate, or like a failure, rescuing others capable of action, and, last but not least, focusing on concerns about appearance, physical, status, position, career, etc. Quite a list, huh? Do you feel like someone just looked in your underwear drawer? Shining a light on how often we become distracted, overcome, or tricked by ego's subversive influence opens the way to truly dealing with it. So how do we remove power from the ego? Well, you guessed it, the famous O word. Oh, take your mind out of the gutter. I am talking about observation. Combining our exploration with non-judgment. Now, this can be a pretty simple exercise, especially as we get accustomed to it. It's a simple exercise of, well, look at that, or non-judgmental observation. It allows us to witness what we're experiencing instead of being immersed and consumed by thoughts or emotions or situations. Removing all evaluations as good or bad, we adopt a neutral attitude when paying attention to our internal climate and our behaviors. Non-judgmental observation immediately dispels the energy and the stronghold of our ego and begins removing us from its grasp. Next, as we become adept at recognizing our ego in action, we can ask, what am I feeling? And allow our emotions to come into full view. We can also uncover what thoughts contributed to that feeling. Allowing ourselves to go deeper to expose ego's derelict attitudes or actions brings the question, what's under this? And then, what am I afraid of? This helps us take charge of ourselves, of our own emotions, and uncover what might be operating beneath our conscious awareness. Continued non-judgment becomes imperative here Because as the more we discover, the greater the chance is for a negative assessment about ourselves, which further entrenches the operation of the ego. We certainly don't need to help it. After full consideration of our internal climate, we can consider other possible reasons for people's attitudes and behavior when ego finds fault or blame toward all we encounter. Exploring simple reasons for how people act instead of personalizing their behaviors helps us shift any perceived antagonistic reactions and stops us from making assumptions that lead to feeling attacked. Realizing that people are people, easily affected by their own ego as well as we are of ours, provides the space to be more loving and accepting and recognize that they may be merely having a challenging day or a period in their life that's difficult. Additionally, we may be presented with an opportunity. Now, this is important. An opportunity to speak up, to set a boundary, or to identify how the situation requires change, a change that will come most likely from us. And let's not forget, ego reactions can always point to areas in our life that call for growth and healing. Finally, after learning to observe our ego in action and diffusing its control, we acquire the skills to employ it with useful tasks. Giving our ego a job to do keeps it busy in a more productive way than collecting situations grounded in worry, competition, or conflict. We can even mentally send it off to count butterflies or sheep or something innocuous, or monitor when the mailman arrives, occupying it like a bored child. As we move forward, know that our ego merely activates fear in its various and sundry forms, ultimately to perpetuate the mindset of separation. Separation from our true self, our higher self, our divine core. Because we gave and continue to give it power, it will generate ways to convince us how much we should listen to its call. When it has us believing in us versus them, or that we're unlovable, or that God is too busy playing golf to help us, it keeps us from remembering who we really are, children of the divine, ever protected, ever cared for, and infinitely loved. So there you have it. There's your exploration of the spiritual ego. What will really help, though, is putting into action some of what the information you got from this chapter. And I have the way for you to do that through something that I call journeys. There's 4 journeys that go along with this podcast. Each of them exercise something from the chapter to help you put into action, exploring and understanding and changing how your ego operates. Journey 1 is called Ego Themes. So this is your time to go and spend some time in your sacred space or a place that's quiet for you to contemplate your thoughts and your feelings about the chapter. Consider for a moment the common ego themes listed in this podcast. If need be, go back and listen to all of those themes once more and write them down like I had suggested before so that you can journal about which ones resonate with you, which seem common to your current life. Now would be a good time to pause this podcast so that you can work on this experiential piece. Now that you have your list for what's currently occurring with ego themes, consider what situations trigger your ego reactions. And why do you think or feel that your ego was triggered? Write about your whole experience and whatever you discovered along the way, and reflect on it. Now let's move on to journey 2, called Your Ego Net. Now we're going to put observation into action throughout your day. Spend some time observing and being present with your thoughts, your emotions, your conversations, all the situations and events of the day. As you're present, set your intention to act by taking out your ego net. This means stopping at least 2 times during the day and catch yourself observing a negative emotional state or thinking towards others or yourself. And make sure that you use look at that, the attitude of non-judgmental observation. Use your list of ego themes to help you identify what themes are present in your daily activity as you observe them. What did you catch with your ego net? Write about it and write about your experience in the process. Pause this podcast so that you can take care of that and then come back because I have some more questions for you. See you again soon. Now, with your ego net, have you observed a shift in your thoughts or feelings about others or yourself just by observing and catching yourself? How did that change, if it did at all? And consider this. Continue to practice using your ego net. Just spending at least the next week catching yourself and using the look at that non-judgmental observation to see how it helps you become more familiar with your ego and its behavior, quote unquote. And when you're ready, at the end of your segment, we'll move on to journey 3. Well, good work for you. You're halfway through the experiential exercises in this podcast. Journey 3 is called Questioning Fear, and it's a time again for you to retreat to your sacred space and get ready to reflect. What do you think is the progress that you made using non-judgmental observation? Can you see that progress? Has anything shifted for you, even if it's just making you more aware of how your ego is operating? When you're finished journaling about that, I have a deeper exploration for you. Let's take a recent ego reaction, something fresh in your memory. Name the behavior and your thoughts and feelings around that. Write that all down. And when you're ready, contemplate the question, what am I afraid of? Here's where you might want to pause to give yourself some time to do that before we come back and check it out. So as you allowed all the possible fears to come into your consciousness, what did you see? Were these old fears? Are they patterns of fears? Are they really intense or are they on the lighter side? can you embrace these fears and know that they're only temporary? What might help you move beyond them? And more importantly, are these fears telling you something that needs to change in your life? Are they telling you about an opportunity to voice your feelings? Are they telling you that there's something that you need to let go of? Or maybe they're trying to tell you about a boundary that needs to be set. Journal about what you think. And when you're ready, we'll move on to Journey 4. Journey 4, depersonalizing. You're almost finished with the experiential exercises in this podcast. This is another opportunity for you to retreat to your sacred space. We're going to go back and contemplate a recent ego reaction once again. Write out the details of it. And then we're going to move on to do an experiment with it. So if you need to, pause this podcast now. Now we're going to depersonalize your ego reaction by considering other possibilities for the behavior of others. I want you to brainstorm alternate perspectives and journal about them, but let me give you some examples first. For example, somebody cut me off on the highway today. And I got really angry thinking about that person and how I thought they were irresponsible and a jerk. But I wanted to consider some other possibilities. So here's some that I came up with. Maybe they were rushing to the hospital because someone in their family was injured. Or maybe they're an emergency care worker rushing to help because they got called to work. Those are just 2 examples. I'm sure you can think of a lot more. Pause here to write out all your brainstorming, and then we'll move on. Here's a question for you now to finish up this exercise. Did depersonalizing help you release any of your ego thoughts or feelings? Did they change your perception and at least soften your reaction? So here's another experiment as I close this podcast for you. Put depersonalization into practice in real time. Observe your reaction to something that happens right in the moment and ask yourself, can I consider some other option that would allow me to not react so heavily right now? And then journal about your progress. Keep up the great work. This is really deep exploration, and I commend you for taking all of these risks in soul discovery. Be blessed. That concludes today's episode from A Journey in Soul Discovery. Thank you for joining me. I welcome your comments, your likes, your follows, and anything you would like to share about what you found here today. I hope you discovered what you were looking for. For more information, please join me at www.pathways2innerpeace.com. Thank you for letting me share my love, my passion, and my light. And as always, be blessed.